Robert Nardelli drove Home Depot stock into the ground and walked away with $210 million. Carly Fiorina gutted Hewlett-Packard's culture and called it transformation. Durk Jager lasted 17 months at Procter Gamble before the board pulled the emergency brake. The smartest leaders in the room became the biggest disasters in the building, not because they lacked intelligence, but because they lacked character. Tom Irwin wrote the autopsy report. Hello, my name's Todd Hagopian, the original Stagnation Assassin. I wrote this, Weaponizing the Hypomanic Toolbox, The Unfair Advantage. But today, we're doing a Stagnation Assassin book review of Derailed. So get ready for a hard-hitting, relentless review of this leadership postmortem, and we will discuss whether it should be sitting on your shelf. Tom Irwin is a PhD, leadership consultant, and executive selection expert who has worked with Fortune 100 companies for over 20 years. In Derailed, he profiles 6 high-profile CEOs who have crashed and burned. Nardelli at Home Depot, Fiorina at HP, Jager at P&G, Stephen Heyer at Starwood Hotels, and others. And he extracts the character deficits that drove their destruction. His thesis, derailment happens long before the crash, and the warning signs are always there. Let's talk about the meat. What does this book get right? I'll tell you what this book does better than almost any other leadership book that I've read. It studies failure instead of success. And failure is where the real lessons live. Every bookshelf is full of how they won. This book shows you how they lost. And losing is a far more generous teacher than winning. Irwin identifies 4 character pillars that, when they erode, derail leaders at any level: authenticity, self management, humility, and courage. That's not a complicated framework. And that's exactly why it's powerful. These aren't obscure competencies, they're at the foundational concrete underneath every sustainable career. Crack any one of them, and the building comes down. The Nardelli case study hits with particular precision. Here's a guy who came from GE, arguably the most rigorous leadership pipeline in corporate history, and he destroyed billions in shareholder value at Home Depot by treating a relationship driven retail culture like a military command structure. Competence without cultural awareness isn't leadership, it's controlled demolition. Irwin's concept that derailment begins long before the visible crash is operationally critical. Every one of these CEOs had warning signs, feedback they ignored, relationships they burned, arrogance they nursed. The erosion was gradual and invisible to everyone except the people brave enough to speak up, who were promptly ignored or fired. That pattern should terrify anyone in a leadership role because it means your derailment could be happening right now, and you might be the last to know. His 5 habits for staying on track: openness to feedback, self awareness, listening to early warning systems, accountability, and resilience form a practical protective perimeter. Not glamorous, not viral, but when you're leading a $1 billion business unit, glamour doesn't save you, character does. Let's talk about the murder board. What does this book get wrong and why? Because even failure studies have their failures. First, and several reviewers have noted this, the analysis can feel oversimplified. Irwin attributes these derailments primarily to character flaws, which is legitimate but completely incomplete. Corporate derailments are complex ecosystems of board dysfunction, market timing, competitive pressure, and organizational inertia. Reducing the Fiorina implosion at HP to a character deficit, while partially accurate, misses the structural and strategic focus factors that were equally responsible. Character matters, but pretending character is the only variable is itself a character flaw. It's called oversimplification. Second, the book tries to position itself as the anti good to great, studying failure instead of successes. But Jim Collins had an army of researchers and a rigorous comparative methodology. Irwin has case studies and intuition. The insights are valuable, but they're observational, not scientific. The prescriptive power would be stronger with deeper research behind it. Third, the how to avoid derailment chapters at the end are solid but pretty generic. Openness, accountability, resilience, these are true, but they're also true of every leadership book published since 1980. The unique value of Derailed is the failure profiles. The solution chapters don't quite match that level of specificity. So the stagnation verdict here is 3 kills out of 5. Derailed gets 3 kills because it fills a critical gap, studying leadership failure instead of worshiping leadership success. But it doesn't go deep enough to earn a higher rating. The character framework is sound, the case studies are compelling, and the central insight that derailment starts long before the crash is genuinely important. But the oversimplified causality, the lack of rigorous research methodology, and the generic prescriptions hold it back from its arsenal grade territory. Read it for the warning and keep your eyes open for the nuance that it misses. That's the verdict on Derailed. 3 kills out of 5. Solid cautionary tale, light on the cure. If you want both the warning and the weapon, the diagnostic and the demolition plan, grab the Unfair Advantage, Weaponizing the Hypomanic Toolbox on Amazon, or go visit toddhagopian.com and stagnationassassins.com for the world's largest databases on stagnation. Subscribe to the Stagnation Assassin show. The train didn't derail because the engine failed. The train derailed because the engineer stopped checking the tracks. So go out there and check your tracks.